8.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Talking politics with Russell Norman.
Co-leader of the Greens, Russell Norman, talking politics and fashion. Good day there, Russell.
Kia ora, Wammo.
You've been hanging out at New Zealand Fashion Week yesterday.
Yeah, I went up to just have a look at the Starfish show, actually, which is the show by Laurie Foon, and it's the environmentally friendly show.
And what way is the fashion environmentally friendly?
It's a combination of organic cottons and fabrics. I think it's something like a quarter of all the pesticides in the world are used on cotton. So using organic cotton makes a huge contribution. And also she's been looking at how to make garments long-lasting, so you don't have this constant turnover of cycle of garments as well. And it's all New Zealand-made, which is fantastic, great to support the New Zealand fashion industry. And
I'd imagine also finding out how to reduce water in the production of clothing as well. It's astounding how much water is used in many garments.
Yeah, cotton in particular is a massive user of water. They've been growing cotton in Western Queensland unbelievably in the headwaters of the Murray-Darling Basin, which is a ridiculous place to grow cotton. But she was using some alternative fabrics like hemp, which obviously has a much lower water demand. And she was using some of the blended, she had this amazing blended alpaca kind of fabric, which was the first time it had been used in a fashion show in New Zealand.
Oh, excellent. And going back to hemp, I mean, it was over 10 years ago. Hemp was in the news quite a bit. I think there were some trials happening in the South Island, and it was going to be perhaps a good cash crop for New Zealand. Where are we at with hemp and growing hemp in New Zealand?
We haven't made a lot of progress. I mean, obviously the problem has been for the Moral Fright Brigade, is the association between hemp and cannabis. So we still haven't made a lot of progress, which is a pity, really, because it makes quite a good fabric.
I mean, the only similarity is that it looks the same, right? That's basically it.
Well, it's just it's the same plant, but it doesn't have the psychoactive element to it, the THC.
You'd have to smoke a whole field, right?
Yeah, you might feel a bit crook.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anyone still pushing that cause, or is it lost at the moment?
We're still pushing it as best as we can, but I mean, I think that you're probably right. It has gone on the back burner a little bit. The industry hasn't disappeared, and globally, of course, it's still happening. So people are still growing hemp around the world because it's such a good fabric, but such a good fibre. We're going to win it sooner or later because people are slowly getting over all the fear around cannabis and all the rest of it. I mean, I see that the Black Police Officers Union in the United States is supporting the legalization of cannabis now because they just say that the war on drugs is ridiculous and not working.
Yeah, well, it's already sort of legalized in California, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you've got all the medical marijuana shops everywhere where they stand outside the shop basically touting for business.
Yeah. And
you go in and see a doctor who says you need cannabis because of your medical condition, which might be that you're feeling slightly anxious from not having had a smoke that day.
Yeah.
And so it's a ridiculous situation they're in at the moment. So there's a proposition there to legalise it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's decriminalised in South Australia and the Australian Capital Territory, where it's just like a parking ticket if you get busted for a certain amount or less.
Yeah, interesting. Moving on to something else, Jerry Brownlee says that the Green Party should support deep-sea mining to fund conservation.
Yeah, it reminds me of that famous village during the Vietnam War, which they had to destroy in order to save. So Jerry's saying to us, we have to take all these risks that might cause pretty significant environmental destruction in order to save the environment. The issue is there's a couple of issues. So one is around deep-sea drilling. The jury's still out on whether the deep-sea drillers really know what went wrong in the Gulf of Mexico with BP's Deepwater Horizon rig, whether the standards are high enough, and if something bad happened, whether New Zealand would have the capacity to plug the hole. I mean, in the Gulf of Mexico there are literally hundreds of rigs. So, when something went wrong, there was a lot of help on hand, and even then, it took them months and months to plug the hole.
Yeah.
If something went wrong off the east coast of Gisborne, there's no rigs around that could come and drill a relief well. So there are some really big environmental issues around deep-sea drilling, and for Jerry just to rush in, I think is pretty irresponsible.
So off the coast of Taranaki, there's some drilling going on out there, and there has been for many decades now, isn't there?
That's right, and it's in shallow water, and they've had a few minor incidents that I'm aware of, but no huge incidents that I've heard of. That
sort of drilling's not considered deep sea?
No. Deep seas are deeper than 400 metres.
Right.
So I think Deepwater Horizons was, 1.5 Ks, or was it more?
I think it's like 4 Ks.
4 Ks, sorry. So I mean, and New Zealand has some deep water. So there's quite, where they're looking in the Rokumara Basin and then the Deep South Basin. There's some shallow bits in it and there's some deep bits in it. And the problem is with deep water drilling is it's very, very hard to fix it because you can't get to it.
Yeah. So we would need some kind of reassurance that that the technology was invented or made available to fix something immediately after something went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the Canadians, for example, have some rules around that you've got to have in place a plan that can get 2 rigs there within a certain number of days so that they can drill relief wells, which is probably the only guaranteed way of actually stopping a bad leak. They've got rules like that. The problem we've got is we're a long way from anywhere, so trying to get a rig down to Gizzy will be quite a challenge if there's a real problem.
Hey, Russel Norman, enjoy Fashion Week if you're still sticking around. Otherwise, we'll catch you next week.
Back in Parliament, sadly, Wammo.
Oh, okay. See you, mate.
See ya.
That is Mr. Russel Norman, co-leader of the Greens.